Hey everyone, this is Brian at F Studios, and this is another edition of Inside the Studio. Alright, well today this session is actually going to be for the AW4416 crew, or the AW crew. And it'll also translate pretty well, I'm sure, over to the rest of the AW models that Yamaha made. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to show everyone who doesn't already know how to set their AW up as a mid-side processor. Now, if you don't know what mid-side processing is, like myself just a few weeks ago, there's a lot of good articles and videos online that you could check out. However, most of them are geared towards modern DAWs such as Pro Tools. You can take what they basically tell you to do and have it applied to more of a console-oriented version. Even analog mixers and stuff that have some of the same capabilities that you would find in this machine here or in DAWs. That being said, I did find that the ways to do it on a modern DAW system is a bit more convoluted than what we find out on a more traditional console-oriented system like the AW here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get things started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have our track, being this case a stereo track that we've been given to master, loaded into the AW's recorder channels. Channels 1 and 2 work. Any channels you wish to use are just fine. And just an FYI, if you are planning on using a different source or a different medium to record your progress to, your work progress, and you already have a track on the master stereo channel of the AW, you could always just unmute this track, which will then come through input channel 1 and 2, or no, monitor channels 1 and 2, excuse me, and then do all your work progress there and output it through the stereo outs of whatever you're choosing your output source to be into whatever source you're going to be recording to work on. It doesn't actually need to be loaded into the recorder tracks on monitors 1 through 16 to do any of the work. Alright, so the next step, once we get that done, is set up your auxiliaries. Get a stereo pair of auxiliaries out and routed back to the input section of the board. Now, for simplicity's sake, what I like to do is I just like to use the digital stereo outs and a single RCA cable, little short guy, and I like to route them right from the output right back into the input. Makes it real simple. Don't have to run any other cables at this point, and it's a lot cleaner. Okay, now the next step is to come to the setup menu, click it, and we want to go to patch out right here. And then I'm going to go to the digital stereo out assign. I'm going to rotate that until I get to auxiliaries 1 and 2. Right there. Because that's the signal I'm going to send out from the AW back into its input board. And we go back to the patch in. And then I'm going to tell the damn thing that I want channels 1 through 6 to pick up digital stereo input. So just rotate around. There's left. There's right. And so forth. just like that. And now we are going to make sure we're on the input section 1 through 16, and we're going to stereo link up 1 through 6. Alright, now with that done, we're going to go over to the pan menu, and then we're going to make sure we're on pan 1 through 16, which we are. Alright, and we're also set up on gang just for simplicity. We are going to keep channels 1 and 2 dead center like that with the stereo bus on, and then we're going to make channels 3 and 4 the far left side of our side component. And we're going to make 5 and 6 the far right side of our side components. So in the stereo situation, here's mid, and there's left, right sides, both sides. Now since we're at this point, let's go ahead and head over to pair bus tab, right here. And we are going to pair auxiliary outs 1 and 2 just to make things easier on us. This will make it that auxiliary 1 gets the left bus and auxiliary 2 gets the right bus. Plus the faders will work in conjunction with just using one fader to control everything. Alright, let's go to view, channel view. Alright, at this point we are going to invert the phases on channel 4 and on channel 5. And the reason why we set it up like this is because if you invert the phase from 3 to 6, it flips your stereo image. And that's not what we're really looking to do. Now come back over to the EQ menu tab, or page, and we're going to go to fader group, which is number 3. And we are going to group channels 3 through 6. Just like that. Then we're going to go over to the mute group. Come on. And we're going to group 3 through 6 again. That way, one goes off, one goes on, one goes up, they all go up, they all go down, so forth. Alright, with that done, we're going to switch over to the monitor tab or page for the recorder section. And then we're going to choose channels 1 and 2. It looks like I need to stereo link them. We're going to go into channel view. And we're going to turn the stereo bus off. Now I want these things just left and right like they're supposed to be, although it may not matter in this case. Let's go ahead and go back to pan. I'm going to unlink these at the moment. Well, inverted gang. Monitor pan. That's right here. Go and pop these back center and then rotate them accordingly. There we go. Alright, let's go back to view. On the monitor channels 1 and 2, they're panned correctly, stereo bus is off. We're going to set up the auxiliaries here to pick up the signal pre-fader. Just like that. And then we're going to boost their output all the way up to 0 dB. Alright, let's go back into the inputs and the home page. Let's go ahead and raise the fader's output now between 6.4 to, or negative 6.4 to negative 5 dB. That, in my experience in the past couple of weeks, has given me results of being output at about the same volume as what the original stereo file would be at, set 0 dB. Just make it 5. There we go. Hold on. Getting closer. There we are. And that is your stereo mid-side matrix. And let's see what the results are going to be of this. One moment. Alright, so let's see what the mid-side processor will do.
We see right through your lies. The time has come. The beginning insurrection. Time to turn out the lights. Our souls are forged in metal, and soon you'll hear the screams. And now it starts. A newly broken into. And you will fall with the turn of the screw. Oppression is your game. Fuck you, we say no way. With fire a path we blaze. To the kingdom we shall raise. The skies will fall. Death is no discretion. Blood will rain down tonight. Run for your buried stone tombs and fall upon your knees.
Okay, well, that's pretty much what we have going on with mid-side processing here with the AW4416 and any other variants, and all other recording systems that have the capability of inverting the phase of any of the channels in the mixer or whatnot. I usually mix in pretty heavily stereo-oriented fashion, meaning I have a lot of information coming out the left and right channels as opposed to being dispersed around maybe a more narrow field or whatnot. So I don't really have the benefit or have the use of using mid-side for the sake of either widening or narrowing the stereo field. It is what it is, and I like how it is. So I don't have any other use for it other than the other features that mid-side could actually work for. And that is, mid-side can also be used to help mastering engineer or anybody else who's doing recording, mixing, whatnot, to be able to affect things that happen within the mid channel separately from the side channel. So you can run different EQ and dynamics processing on your mid channels as opposed to what you're going to do on your side channels here. So in a case like this track is just one that I did a number of years ago on a 4-track cassette recorder using the AW as a mixdown deck. And you know, it sounds okay right now. It's got a little bit of master compression on it and stuff, but you know, what if this track was sent to me from somebody else and I thought, you know what, well, all I have here is the stereo mix. It sounds okay, it's well balanced, but I would still like to have a little more low-end punch from the kick as a mastering engineer. Is there really anything I can do about it? Yes. Under mid-side processing, I can do just that. Let's go ahead and back the track up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, back to 0. Start it up. All right. Now we're just going to select the mid channels here. And then we're going to go to EQ, back to the main front page. And I want to enhance the kick, which is going to be around 70 hertz. And I'm going to give it a fairly tight peaking bell curve there. And I don't want it to affect the low resonance of the floor toms. So I'm going to leave these channels alone because those are the side channels where the floor toms reside. And I'm only going to adjust the EQ on these two channels. Here we go.
Well, I've got news for you. You think you've got us blind? We see right through your lies. The time has come. The beginning insurrection. Time to turn out the lights. Our souls are forged.
Now you were able to tell that the low end punch from the kick drum came up and it didn't affect anything else on the track. It didn't affect the toms, it didn't affect the snare because of where I had the curve set, nothing. So effectively I did exactly what I wanted to do. I affected the kick only from a stereo mixed down track. Now, you know, this sounds okay, but let's say now I also want to increase the way the cymbals, clarity, the sharpness, the brilliance come out, the sparkle, whatever you want to call it. But I don't want it to affect the sibilants of the vocals or the higher frequency resonance from the snare. Well, since the cymbals reside primarily within the side channels because of being picked up and how they were mixed from the overheads, which are panned hard left and hard right, I can just jump into the side channel system here and I can adjust EQ on these two stereo channels individually. So let's go ahead and check it out.
And soon you'll hear the screams. And now it starts. And you'll be broken into. And you will fall with the turn of the screw. Oppression is your game. Fuck you, we say no way. With fire a path we blaze. To the kingdom we shall raise. The skies will fall. Death is no discretion. Blood will rain down tonight. Run for your buried stone tombs and fall upon your knees.
So there you go. I've effectively have changed the mix of the sound a little bit on just a couple of the instruments, or just the kick drum and the overheads, and particularly the cymbals, without affecting the vocals, without affecting the toms, without affecting the guitars, all from just changing a few things on a stereo mid-side matrix processing from a stereo mix. And of course, you might think, well, you could have done that anyway with just EQing the stereo mix individually or separately by itself without going through this whole process. But that's not true, because the floor toms, the resonance goes all the way down to the same area where I've adjusted the punch for the kick, and so therefore they'd come through a lot more boomy. And for this situation, I personally didn't want to do that, so it allowed me to attack just the kick itself and not worry about anything else. And the same with the hi-hats and the overhead cymbals. I was able to attack the cymbals and bring their brilliance out a little bit more without affecting the way the vocal sounded when you pronounce the S's, and without affecting how the snare sounded with the higher frequency harmonics that it generates. So that is one thing you can do with mid-side processing. If you don't have the original individual multi-tracks, the stems to do all that stuff with on an individual basis, and this is all you get. It gives you some flexibility in what you can do. Now, I've got a treat for you guys if you're still watching or bothering to pay attention to anything I'm saying. I am actually got this thing pre-set up for something that is just a proof of concept. I'm going to come over here into scene 7, and now you noticed all my channels are up, including a couple on this side. What I have done is I have created a mid-side processor with multi-band compression and the ability to run de-essing and notch filtering on the fly. And how I did that was basically the same setup that we described before. We're just running our 2 auxiliaries in and out right there into the stereo field. But now I've got 18 channels picking up channels left and right. And if we go here, this is our low register of mid channels, mid register of mid channels, and high register of mid channels, which could be used as a de-esser if need be. But you know, on stereo fields, mixed fields is probably pointless. And then here's our left side lows, left side mid, left side high, right side low, right side mid, and right side high. And the notch filtering can come in from taking the difference between this section here where we got the high pass filter on it and just cutting out a little bit of what you may find here. So right now I've got it at 1 kilohertz on the high side for low pass, and I have a 630 kilohertz on the low side for high pass. Now if I just happen to bother to bring this up to 4 kilohertz, we've effectively notched out everything running from 1 kilohertz to 4 kilohertz. But it creates a bit of a problem. When you do that, you change the dynamics between the phasing of all the frequencies, and it throws your mid-side processing a little bit out of whack. Obviously it makes the side channels a little quieter, but because the phasing is a little off with the center channels, the mid channels, it narrows the stereo field, and you are able to more easily pick up on the inverted phasing trick that's used to create the matrix. Even if you turn the side channels up in relation to the mid, it doesn't fix the result. Anyway, what I've done with this track is set it up with a mid-side processor, just like we said, with a little bit of compression used on the channels. Like that's for the low center or low mid. That's the mid-range mid channel, and that's the high mid channel, and so forth. It also allows me to still have access to 2 bands of equalization per each channel, which I can do a little bit of customization. Plus the fact that you can use the outputs from the output gain from the compression, and you can still use your faders to change levels to give you what's called dynamic equalization. And in this case, let's see if we go back to the home. There we are, home. Let's go and make sure everything's even at 5.0. There we go. Let's go ahead and hear what this old track sounds like. Again, this is recorded on 4-track cassette to start with, and then later on other elements were added with the AW4416, and it was mixed down in the AW with a little bit of master compression, so I can't really do too much more to it, but I was able to use the multi-band compression, a little bit of EQ to kind of help it out a little bit, make it resonate a little more. Let's check it out.
Inside the mind of a madman, there is nothing much to see. Maybe a product of the violence, and smut is all he be. A possible chemical imbalance, maybe just water on the knee. No, that's not right. That couldn't be. That's just silly. To diagnose one state of mentality, one must first observe his actions in the physicality. You can't just cut him open and look for something broken. You wouldn't know what to look for anyway. And through these observations, you may look for some relation to some similar cases from days gone by. And from these realizations, you begin examinations of his mind. Maybe he's got brief psychotic disorder. Or perhaps he has schizophreniform disorder. It's really hard to say within his mental state if he's only got one form or maybe all. And so we try to rationalize, hoping to conclude in time the ailments within our patient's head. But to dismay, we've come to say we cannot figure out what's wrong with him. Inside the mind of a madman, there is nothing much to see. A ganglion of neurons and fatty tissues is all he be. Possible oxygen starvation caused this now monstrosity. Possibly. Inside the mind of a madman, there is nothing much to see. Maybe this crazed psychotic killer suffers from malformed synapses. A generous blast of paranoia is all he really needs to do his deed. That despicable deed.
I'll just tell you one last thing.
All right. Well, I hope you found that demonstration informative and gotten some kind of understanding of what you can do with mid-side processing, how you can set the AW up to do it, and what you might be able to accomplish with it if you just use a little bit of imagination, ingenuity, and time to figure it all out. Anyway, thanks for watching.